My first impression with Mr. Walters was he was a wild and crazy guy because he had long hair. He looked sort of like a hippie, laid back.
Fun and, very quiet. He had a very quiet nature, but he was funny. He would just, very quietly slip a little joke or something.
I would call him a student-friendly teacher. He always put kids first. Always smiled. Nothing seemed to rattle Brian. Just a great guy.
"38-year-old Brian Walters started his day like he starts every school day. He left home to drive to Bullitt East High School, but the English teacher never made it inside his classroom. Police say he overcorrected a turn into the path of a truck.
I was floored, to be honest with you. I got the call personally from the sheriff in Spencer County, and who I know, who's a retired Mount Washington police officer. I can tell you, in regards to preparing to be a teacher, preparing to be a principal, there's no instruction manual on how to handle that.
I coordinate the subs for the teachers, and they sign in, and I didn't have a sub sign in. I checked the internet, and he didn't put in for a sub, but he wasn't at school. And, everybody runs late sometimes, and that's okay. But 5 minutes late is not a horrible big deal. But at quarter after, your gut just tells you there is something wrong. He's just not that person. He wasn't that person to be that late.
Turner had stopped by my room that morning, and she said she was having a cover for him, which was very unusual. She goes, "Brian's not here. He must have had a wild weekend. He's late," because it was Monday. And I said, "Yeah," because he had taken off the Friday before. His wife was on spring break, so they were going to have some good quality family time. So we just figured it wore him out and he had overslept.
So I was literally floored. I remember I had to shut my door for a minute and just kind of think. That's just not something. I get cold chills now just talking about it. But, truly, there were so many things that came into play right away. Obviously, just Brian's life, his family, his kids. I knew he had young kids. That was one of the first things I thought of. I'm a dad myself. And then when we had to go into the mode of, okay, we've got 1,400 students here. We have 100 staff members. How are we going to do this? And so just a lot of things, and it was tough. It was a long day.
I didn't believe it. But this is the first person in my life, I turned 50 this year, first person in my life that I saw on a daily basis that I didn't see on a daily basis anymore.
And when they called me in the office to tell me, it just, there is nothing you can do in any job or any part of your life to ever prepare you for something like that. Somebody just doing what they normally do, come to work every day, say goodbye to your wife and kids that morning and leave and come to work and not make it all the way there. There's nothing that can ever prepare you for that.
I knew immediately that the teachers needed to know before the students did, because no matter how bad it was going to be, the teachers were going to need to be strong. So we made up a reason to get the student body into the gym, and I can't remember what we did, but I think Miss Terry almost single-handedly talked to the whole student body in the gym by herself, and then the teachers went to the library and I told them. And that's when it really hit me how hard it was going to be.
His family told us that he accomplished so much in 38 years.
He was the most wonderful human being there ever was. I know every mother says that, but I was so proud, as we all were, of him and his accomplishments.
His death touches another high school community. Walters also coached the girls' soccer team at Ballard High School.
Everybody's going to miss him a lot. He was an awesome coach. We loved him so much.
Since he started coaching soccer about 10 years ago, soccer was everything. It's where he was always at. Every game. If he wasn't at coaching a game, he was watching friends' kids play, taking our kids to go play. I mean, they've been in soccer since they could walk.
Walters leaves behind a wife and two very small children.
We met August the 6th, 1993. We met at like 4 in the morning. My roommate had bumped into a bunch of him and his friends. Give me just a second, baby. And So I met him that night. The first words I ever said to him were, because he really didn't match. You see Brian dress. Like, you don't match, but you have really sexy toes, because I sounded really mean, and he looked at me like I was a really mean person. So the next day he calls up, and he's like, hey, is your roommate there? I'm like, she's still my best friend. I'm like, no, she's at work. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. He's like, let's go to lunch. I was like, okay. And after that, we were together every day for almost 20 years this August. Would have been.
You know, I didn't know that Brian was a military person. You know, that was one of the things when you meet Brian firsthand, he doesn't strike you as that strong military kind of guy.
He spent 4 years in the Air Force. He spent 3 months in Kuwait. He was most of the time he was what they call ground radio control. He fixed ground radios. In times of war, his job would have been to tell the planes where to drop the bombs. But, you know, they didn't really he was in the time of peace. He didn't really see a lot of major action. He spent just a few months over in Kuwait, just, I guess, to do a routine exercise. He liked it. It was fun. He was stationed in Mississippi, Texas. That's where we lived for a long time, Texas. He got accepted to the Air Force Academy, but chose not to go. He didn't want to make a career out of it, but his test scores were apparently off the chart. I remember one day he was in the military, called me up, and he had gotten his tongue pierced. Like eight of them went out one night, and everybody got their tongue pierced. So he calls me up and was like, Abdul, guess what? What's wrong with you? I got my tongue pierced. You what? So yeah, he had his tongue pierced for about, I'd say, a good 5-6 years. But most of his military life, he had his tongue pierced. He used to drive a little bitty Miata. Loves techno music. And loved poetry, actually. He loved English. He loved to read. He loved to teach English. That was his thing. I don't think he liked arts and humanities some, but he really wanted to go back into teaching English. He loved teaching the great classics. That was something he was really passionate about.
Fondest / saddest memory, one of the last days that he was with us, we had a conversation about how we would be remembered as teachers, and he left here that week saying, we won't be missed at all. If we weren't here tomorrow, we won't be missed at all. Wouldn't it be nice if we were remembered with petit fours, cake, and punch? And when we had our first English department meeting after he had passed, that's what we had, punch and petit fours, because he needed to be celebrated. And I think he would have been completely surprised by how much he's been missed.
He was just, he loved life. I know some days he could be a little bit hard to handle, and some days he was cranky. He'd come home all the time, or he'd have kids write letters to him, like, you were so cranky today, Mr. Walters. But he liked working with kids, especially the kids that really wanted to learn something or to get something from him. I don't think he would have done anything else but be a teacher or be a soccer coach, or a coach in general, I guess. He loved his children. That would be his greatest legacy. I mean, he was the best kind of father. He would play blocks for hours with his kids, watch the stupidest movies with them for like hours, read to them every single night, and sang songs to them every night. He sang Butterfly Kisses to Maddie every night of her life since I think she was born. I can't think of much else to say. I've known him for 20 years. I've worn my life with him and then without. I'd say that'd be his biggest thing. Do what makes you happy, because you never know when you're not coming back home that day. Ballard made a beautiful memory book that all the players made with pictures. It was really nice to be freshly done. Everybody's photocopied or downloaded all the newscasts that were done to preserve them on DVDs for the kids. A lot of scrapbooks were made. Things like this video are going to be the only thing they have to remember him by. I mean, can't see him, they're off camera, but his son has just turned 3. Very honestly, he won't remember his father. He just won't. He'll vaguely, just stories that we tell. So things like this will be the only thing they have of their father, which is sad, because he adored these kids. They were the reason he got up some days, the reason he went to bed cussing some days, but the reason he got up most days. Things like that, things like these are what these kids have to remember him by.